Shifting focus for now, Russia has intensified its assault on Ukraine, unleashing a new wave of destruction. Zaporizhia is the latest target of the Russian attack, leaving 7 dead. Ukraine has fought back with drone attacks on Russian territory and is in fact pushing to develop its own long-range missile capabilities. Our next report getting you more.
The situation in Zaporizhia is grim. A ballistic missile, likely an Iskander, has left buildings in ruins. With rescuers racing to find survivors beneath the rubble, Moscow has repeatedly denied attacking civilian targets.
My friend is here somewhere and I'm very worried about her. I don't know who to contact or where to look for information about her, and it's a bit of worry for me.
Kyiv pleads for urgent international aid to withstand Russia's escalating onslaught.
We don't have enough systems now to protect our country from Russian missiles, but our partners do have these systems. We repeat again and again that air defense systems should save lives, not collect dust in storage bases.
This intensified fighting in Zaporizhia risks becoming a strategic nightmare for Ukraine, especially as its forces are losing ground in the eastern Donetsk region. Simultaneously, Russia is solidifying its grip on the Kursk region, claiming the recapture of 2 villages after a protracted battle. This marks a worrying development in Ukraine's cross-border offensive launched in August. Ukrainian soldiers report growing pessimism over the costly Kursk operation, where they remain outgunned and outmanned. Military analysts predict another wave of Russian offensives in December, raising fears of further setbacks for Ukraine. In retaliation, Ukraine has struck Russian border regions, targeting oil depots and industrial facilities in Rostov and Bryansk. Oil depots burn and industrial facilities suffer damage as Kyiv attempts to strike back against overwhelming Russian firepower. Moscow has made it clear that it is not willing to make concessions on Ukraine as Kyiv is initiating move towards negotiations, saying diplomacy can end the war. With Donald Trump returning to the White House, Ukraine fears military aid would be severely reduced. Kyiv is now scrambling to accelerate its own weapons production. It's a race against time, with both sides deploying their best war assets to gain the upper hand. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Taliban's Minister for Refugees, Khalil Haqqani, has been assassinated following a suicide attack in Kabul. According to sources, the attacker went into the ministry disguised as a refugee looking for his papers. When Khalil returned from the mosque and passing through the corridor, the bomb was detonated, which triggered the blast. Terror group the Islamic State has been blamed for the attack. WION has now accessed the picture of the suicide bomber. This is the moment when he enters the Ministry of Refugee building. He can be seen with a bandaged hand. Khalil Haqqani is the brother of Jalaluddin Haqqani, the founder of the Haqqani network. He is also the uncle of Sirajuddin Haqqani, the Taliban Minister of Interior. Violence has waned in Afghanistan somewhat since the Taliban forces took over in 2021, ending their war against the United States and the NATO-led forces. However, the regional chapter of the Islamic State, known as Islamic State Khorasan, is active in Afghanistan and has regularly targeted civilians, foreigners, and Taliban officials with gun and bomb attacks. Some sources claiming the attack is suspected to be the handiwork of the IS Khorasan. Afghanistan has, in the recent past, come under terror attacks. In September this year, at least 6 people were killed, over a dozen were injured in an explosion that took place in southern Kabul. The Kabul police said a person wearing explosives on his body detonated. In April 2024, 1 person was killed, 3 others wounded by an explosion in Kabul. ISIS claimed responsibility on its Telegram channel, saying a minibus carrying Hazaras was blown up as it passed through a Taliban checkpoint. Multiple people were killed in March when an ISIS suicide bomber targeted a bank as people were gathering to collect their salaries. Authorities put the blast toll at 3, but hospital sources told AFP 20 people lost their lives. In January this year, a bomb blast ripped through a minibus in Afghanistan's capital, Kabul, killing at least 2 civilians and wounding 14 others. The attack occurred in the city's western Dasht-e-Barchi Shiite Muslim neighborhood. In fact, Dasht-e-Barchi has experienced persistent deadly militant bombings targeting Shiite mosques, schools and hospitals. IS Khorasan has claimed credit for almost all attacks. Our top story tonight on GRAVITAS focuses on what's happening in Syria, where Jihadi forces are on the march, battling against Kurdish forces, capturing major cities that are basically redrawing the map of control in the region. Amidst all of this, Israeli forces continue to launch airstrikes on Syrian military targets and in the process destroying naval vessels, anti-aircraft installations and manufacturing sites. Already battered by more than a decade of civil war, Syria is facing more devastating conflicts amid a power vacuum in the country, following the toppling of its former president, Bashar al-Assad. As per reports, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, or HTS, has captured the strategic city of Deir ez-Zor, following fierce battles with the Kurdish-led and US-backed Syrian Democratic Forces, commonly known as SDF. HTS leaders reportedly said the city was fully under their control, along with the strategic nearby town of Bokamal. Incidentally, SDF had only moved into Deir ez-Zor last Friday, replacing the Syrian government forces. Their hold lasted mere days before HTS launched its offensive.
كل هذا الإنجاز من جهدنا ومن صناعتنا رأيتم الصواريخ.
In fact, HTS leaders have reportedly said that they will advance towards Raqqa, Hasaka and other areas in eastern Syria. Raqqa, once the Islamic State stronghold, fell to the Kurds in the year 2017. Now HTS has its eyes on claiming the city. Meanwhile, the Syrian National Army, commonly known as SNA, is also launching offensive against the Kurds. SNA is basically a coalition of armed groups that came together to oppose Assad. Kurds are an ethnic group spread across the region in Syria, Iraq, Iran, Turkey. They run an autonomous administration in northeastern Syria called Autonomous Administration of North and East Syria. The US sees the Kurds as key allies in the fight against ISIS. As per reports, the Syrian National Army launched coordinated attacks on Kurdish forces across northeastern Syria and in the process captured Manbij in eastern Syria and are advancing towards the Kurdish city of Kobani in northern Syria. The war monitor said the fighting between Syrian National Army and the Kurdish-led forces in northern Syria has left 218 people dead in just 3 days. Meanwhile, Israel has continued to intensify its aerial campaign in Syria. Over the past 48 hours, Israeli forces have launched more than 350 airstrikes on Syrian military targets, 350. The targets include naval vessels, anti-aircraft installations, and manufacturing sites. In fact, videos released by the Israeli Defense Forces showing devastating attacks on key infrastructure, including the port of Latakia. Like we told you yesterday on GRAVITAS, Israeli planes bombed at least 3 major Syrian army air bases that had dozens of helicopters and jets. The strikes hit the Kamishli air base in northeast Syria, the Shinshar base in Homs, and the Aqraba airport southwest of Damascus. In a statement, the IDF said it has destroyed 70 to 80% of former President Bashar al-Assad's military. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, meanwhile, has made his stance clear. While expressing a willingness to engage with Syria's new regime, Netanyahu basically warned that if the rebels permit Iran to re-establish its influence or transfer weapons to Hezbollah, Israel will respond with overwhelming force.
If this regime allows Iran to re-establish itself in Syria or allows the transfer of Iranian weapons or any other weapons to Hezbollah or attacks us, we will respond forcefully and we will exact a heavy price from it. What happened to the previous regime will also happen to this regime.
You see, during Assad's rule, Syria was a key corridor between Iran and Hezbollah, along with other Tehran-backed proxies. Iran has reportedly opened dialogue with the new rebel leadership. Mohammad al-Bashir, who has been governing HTS-controlled province of Idlib in northwest Syria since January, has been appointed as the country's caretaker prime minister. In a country already ravaged by years of war, the dynamics in Syria continue to shift rapidly. As Jihadi forces march forward and Israel unleashes that firepower, the future of Syria continues to remain in peril.